All right, we're back with another episode of App Stories. And you know what? We're continuing our series of Wish episodes this week with watchOS and tvOS. And I'm here with, of course, our editor-in-chief, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, hi. I'm back. I'm here. And we are finishing the series of wishes, I believe, today, John.
Just in the nick of time, because WWDC is right around the corner. So we've, it's like we planned this or something. I don't know. I think we might have actually planned this.
Some people are professionals. Maybe that's us. Maybe. Who knows?
At least you are, I think. Well, this episode is brought to you, just so everybody knows, by InnoReader, Pingdom, and Linode. And because this is the final episode of our wish list episodes, we have a special guest, and that is our fellow editor, Alex Guyot. Hi, Alex.
Hey, guys. Happy to be here.
Hello, hi.
It's wonderful to have you.
It's not like we talk every week.
No, not at all. I haven't talked to you guys in so long.
And we've been planning a little something with Alex that will be out in public very soon. And the reason he hasn't been writing on the site is because he's been working on other things. So I'll leave it at that for now. But because we have a lot to cover, I want to dive right into tvOS because, Federico, we know that there's a lot of things that people wish for tvOS, which actually is a lie. It's a fairly short list, I think. But I know you have a couple of things.
I have a couple of things. And really, I just want to say up front, I just want to talk more about watchOS. And I want to talk about watchOS because we have Alex, who's also, he writes his excellent annual watchOS review on MacStories. We're coming up. What number of is this going to be, Alex? watchOS 8?
This is watchOS 8, yeah, which I think is my 7th review or 6th, maybe. It's probably my 6th.
Oh,
I don't think we did watchOS 1, but I've been doing them since watchOS 2.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is I just want to be done with tvOS quickly. I have two things that I want to mention that I would like to see in tvOS 15. The idea of setting up a routine, like a TV routine, like a TV automation, I guess would be a good way to describe it. I find myself repeating some actions on the Apple TV over and over. The Apple TV is the only device that we use to watch video. And I just wish that I could put together these routines like I can on iOS and the iPad, to do things like open a specific application, start playing something, and maybe set a specific volume level, and also turn my lights blue and dim them. Basically like a shortcuts automation, but for tvOS, and for not just to open specific apps, but to set specific parameters on tvOS. So in this case, it would be like play my first item in my Up Next queue, for example. Or, again, set a specific volume level on the TV. So to have that kind of automation on tvOS, I feel like it would save me a lot of time. I could run those routines via Siri, because there's a Siri button on the Apple TV remote. And I just feel like I wouldn't want to have the full Shortcuts app on my TV. It's not something that whatever, how would you even use it? But for this kind of task, I think it could be useful. And the other thing that I would like to see, and this is probably never going to happen, I just want to see a Files app, like a file manager on tvOS, for two reasons. One, to actually use that storage somehow, because people are buying 32 gigs or 64 gigs Apple TVs for really no good reason. But what I just want to do is I want to take my high-resolution lossless music library, and I just want to store it locally on my Apple TV so that I can play that via connected speakers or the TV's own audio without having to stream it from my Mac Mini via Plex, which is what I'm doing right now. I just think it could be fun, or maybe, could be a movie, could be a TV show. People are still having... they're still downloading and storing TV shows and movies locally. And I think it could be useful if you could put those in the Apple TV's internal storage. Now, obviously, those files would have to be transferred over Wi-Fi because the Apple TV, especially if it's in the back of your television, it's not something that you want to unplug and replug every single time you want to transfer files over USB. But it could be done wirelessly. And I think it could be useful to have a local repository of content on the TV.
Yeah, it could be done wirelessly or it could be done with Ethernet too. I mean, I've got my Apple TV connected with Ethernet, and that's a nice way to have a nice constant steady stream of bits shooting to your television. But I would take your suggestion, I guess, and expand on it a little bit in that I would really like to have things like, whether it's the local files that you described or the things that are streaming over Plex, have that content show up in the TV app. Now, I don't think that's likely to ever really happen on the Apple TV for a variety of reasons. But one of the problems, I think, with the TV app on tvOS is that it's incomplete. I mean, there are providers, third-party providers like Netflix, that have opted out of it, which is too bad. And you don't have, apps like Plex or Channels able to provide content to it either. So it's kind of a half solution. And if there are issues with the TV app, but it is nice to have a centralized place to see what's in your up next queue and kind of plan what you're going to watch. And right now, the TV app doesn't really deliver on that completely because you don't have all of your content there. One of the other things, I guess, Federico, I would suggest is something that goes back all the way to the original Apple TV. And I had that Apple TV, which actually ran on a version of macOS with a little tiny iPod style hard drive on it, right? I think it was like one of those 1.8-inch Toshiba hard drives in there. And it was able to play music without having the TV on. And you might ask, why would I want to do that? It's because if you have people over to your house and you've got the TV going in order to play music, it's distracting. People will inevitably just stare at the screensaver or something. And I'd like to use the Apple TV a little bit more like a receiver and actually play music directly from it without actually having to have a TV on. And that's not possible with the current gen of Apple TV. I have a solution for this, which I described in Club MacStories last week, but it ought to be possible from the Apple TV as well. And I guess two other things I'll mention very quickly before we get into watchOS. One is an actual home app on the Apple TV, because there are integrations such as, with video doorbells and that kind of thing into the Apple TV, and it can serve as a hub. However, it doesn't have a home app. And I think that there is a place for having a home app, whether it's seeing all your video feeds from cameras in one place, or checking whether your door is locked, or a bunch of other different things. And I think that ought to be added. And then secondly, I'd actually like to see widgets extended to the Apple TV. If I've got the screensaver going, why not have some of those screensavers?
That's a good idea.
Right? Why not have some of those things like show you what the weather is, or maybe your feed from your RSS client, or headlines, or movie news, or whatever it happens to be, whatever you want it to be, or your calendar. Those are things that I think would be useful to have kind of floating by on your TV screen. So I'd like to see that as well.
Yeah, just tying a couple of those things together. I can, one of the things that I do every time I sit down to watch something on my Apple TV is I have a HomeKit scene for movie lights. And if that shortcut to run that, or, if there was a home app that I could access that in, or if it was a shortcut or whatever, but if it was a widget kind of floating on the home screen, it would be so convenient to, I'm about to open up the Netflix app or whatever app I'm watching in, and I just really quick swipe over and click, hey, it's movie lights time, and it sets the lighting in my house. That would be so great. And that's one of the things that I actually probably have the Apple TV remote in my hand every time I run that HomeKit scene. So that would be super convenient to have just right on the TV.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I think we're thinking about. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by InnoReader, the premier service for RSS power users. Here's the thing, though. InnoReader is so much more than just an RSS sync service. With InnoReader, you can monitor email newsletters, Twitter, Facebook pages, web pages that don't even have RSS feeds, and with a recent update, an audio player that allows you to use it for audio content like podcasts too. Stop visiting a long list of bookmarks every single day and let InnoReader deliver the internet to your doorstep through its web app, recently redesigned mobile apps, and third-party apps that integrate with the service too. At its core, InnoReader is a highly configurable RSS service. InnoReader offers extensive search functionality to help you find the news feeds that you want to read and to search your existing collection too. It will even recommend new feeds based on what you like already and let you know when a feed goes dead so that you can trim your list to just those that are active. InnoReader works on the web and with its own iOS and Android apps, and of course with a long list of third-party RSS clients that have integrated it too. I've been using InnoReader for years. It's the core of my daily research at MacStories, and I couldn't live without it, frankly. I've got all sorts of custom things set up, and I use it for things far beyond just work. I also use it to track things like book reviews, movies, video games, music, all of my other interests too. InnoReader is free to try, so you've got nothing to lose by going to InnoReader.com now and signing up. And for a limited time, listeners of App Stories can upgrade to a Pro plan for 20% off for the first year using the code MACSTRY and the number 2 at checkout. That's a fantastic deal. Again, that URL is InnoReader.com and the code MACSTRY2 for 20% off your first year. I'll put a link in the show notes too. Go there today and take back control of your news feed with InnoReader. Our thanks to InnoReader for their support of the show. All right, Federico, let's move on to watchOS, because that's why we really have Alex here, because he's the expert and he's got more ideas about this, I think, than either you or I do. But what have you got for us, Federico? What are some of your watchOS wishes?
Mine are pretty simple, I think pretty obvious. Like, this is not going to surprise anybody, but I feel like we've reached the point where I just want to see third-party watch faces made by other developers. I appreciate the selection of options created by Apple, but I just feel like it's time to, allow folks to personalize their Apple Watches more. And I think we've seen how much personalization and customization matters to regular people with the iOS 14 update and the home screen and widgets last year. The whole bring your aesthetic to the iPhone sort of trend. And I just feel like Apple could have an even bigger trend on the Apple Watch, because the watch face is something that you see all the time. It's always on you and it's visible to other people as well. I also dislike in watchOS 7 how slow and clunky managing notifications is. And I especially dislike having to scroll all the way to the top of the notification list when I'm on the watch face to find the clear all button. That used to be available as a shortcut by force pressing on screen, but since Force Touch has been removed from watchOS, now you can no longer just press in the middle of the display. You have to scroll all the way to the top. And it's fine. It's just, I wish there was a better way to do that rather than having to, especially if you get a lot of notifications, you have to scroll for 10 seconds to the top. And it's kind of annoying.
I have a solution for you, Federico.
Which is don't get notifications on the watch?
No, just let it go. Just let those notifications build up. They don't have to be cleared.
Oh, no. No, I dislike that. No.
Out of sight, out of mind. It's okay.
No.
I know you can't
live with that.
That's what I've arrived at too. I also just kind of declared bankruptcy on watchOS notifications.
Really?
Yeah, but I think I agree with Federico though. I think it's dumb that you can't clear them. But because you can't, it's become so unmanageable that I'm just like, I'll see them when they show up, or I won't see, or I'll see them on my phone later. That's.
I can probably try that and see how it goes. But I know myself, I also clear them on the iPhone every few days. So I don't know. Lastly, I want to mention, I think I mentioned this in my iOS review as it related to shortcuts. I wish it was faster to run shortcuts on the watch. Instead, now if you pin a specific shortcut as a complication to your watch face, when you press that icon, you still have to confirm the thing that you just pressed. And I don't know, but Apple has a thing for confirmation dialogues, it seems, especially when it comes to shortcuts. They just want to make sure, are you sure you want to do the thing you just said you want to do? And I don't know, I just wish there was a way to disable it, because when I press that button, I know what I'm doing. And finally,
I totally agree.
On the topic of complications, I wonder if there could potentially be a new app or new utility made by Apple that allowed me to design my own complications. Let me have like a basic design tool that lets me design complications starting from data and having them look exactly the way I want them. Because so often I find myself finding a complication that could potentially be useful for me, but the way it's designed, it almost gets to what I want, but it doesn't quite look like the kind of complication that I want to see all the time. So I'm basically saying, what if Apple Sherlocked WatchSmith and had a feature in watchOS that lets you design your own watch face, like design complications. You start from data, but then you design the way it looks. I don't know. Could be fun.
Yeah, that would definitely be fun, as long as they don't put it in the actual watch app, because I think the watch app is one of those things that I feel like Apple has to rethink a little bit, because it's really clunky to use. And one of the things that I'm hoping for is better app management, because right now you can either have no apps that have watch variants automatically installed on your watch, or you can have all of them installed on your watch. And neither solution is particularly good. I mean, if you download a lot of apps like I do, and we know that I obviously download way too many apps, but if you have all of the watch apps automatically installed on your watch, you end up with just a huge mess of apps that you don't really want on your watch necessarily. But if you don't do that and you have to install them one at a time, I find it a little too hard to discover what has been actually added, because sometimes, an app launches on the App Store and it's just got an iPhone version, and then maybe later on it adds the iPad, and later on it adds the watch. I would like some sort of system that lets me know when something has added a watch app that's not just the release notes in the App Store, and not just going to the watch app and noticing that there's a new app in the list. I want something that says, hey, you're using this app an awful lot. Did you know that there's a new watch app that was launched last week? That would be kind of nice. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. If you have a website, what purpose does it serve? Whether it's driving people to your products, collecting sales leads for your company, or providing customer service with a contact form, when these critical functions fail, you lose out on business. Not to mention the bad experience your users have. But there's a solution: transaction monitoring from Pingdom. Starting at just $10 a month, transaction monitoring runs checks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will alert you when cart checkout, forms, or login pages fail before they affect your customers and your business. Pingdom will notify you the moment there's a failure over SMS, email, or via your favorite apps like Slack, OpsGenie, and PagerDuty. Depending on what's being monitored or the severity of the outage, you can customize who's alerted and how they get the notification. Don't let your users discover the problem with your website. You should be the first to know, and it's super easy to get started. Just go to pingdom.com/signup right now for a 30-day free trial with no credit card required. Then, when you're ready to buy, use the code AppStories at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Again, that's pingdom.com/signup to get started for a 30-day free trial with no credit card required, and the code AppStories at checkout when you decide to buy for 30% off that first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from SolarWinds for their support of the show. All right, and Federico, before we really let Alex go crazy, I want to mention, of course, the Home app, because the Home app on the Apple Watch is still pretty bad. I mean, it's the big tiles on the iPhone transferred to the watch, and it doesn't work there. It's just if you have a lot of scenes or a lot of devices, it's just too hard to scroll through all those. And I realize that those are favorites, and you can select a smaller number of favorites, but favorites work very differently on the iPad, iPhone, and watch, and something that might look and fit perfectly well on an iPad isn't going to work on a watch at all. So I'd like to see some cues taken from apps like Home Plus 5 and that sort of thing, or Home Run 2 that's coming out later this week, that actually allows users to select scenes and devices and control them in a smaller grid that's easier to fit more on a particular watch screen. So I'd like Home to get better. Alex, hit me with your first wish, and Federico and I will jump in with our thoughts on these, I think, as you go.
All right. So I think what I really want to see going forward in watchOS is just a system-wide focus on quicker interactions. I think kind of the whole watchOS operating system suffers from being a little too heavy. And, one of the culprits of this, one of the main culprits that I notice, is something that you guys have both mentioned here, which is this emphasis on these card interfaces, like the Home app, or you see it all over the operating system. The Music app is a big offender here, where you've got a full screen card and you have to scroll the whole screen to get past it to the next card. And I get that this is a small display, but I think I don't want to be scrolling that much through that many interface elements. I want everything to happen really fast on my watch. If I'm going to go to the Apple Watch instead of to my iPhone, I want to be in and out of the operating system as quickly as possible. And I think that should be kind of the whole point of the watch. I don't think that cheapens the watch experience or anything like that if you were to be honestly using it less than you need to get the same kind of things done. I think that's exactly what the watch is built for, which is to allow quick interactions that I could do this quicker on my wrist than I can by taking out my phone. And one of the things there is these card interfaces that just waste a lot of time scrolling. And if you look at something like WidgetSmith, you can see they have this kind of 4 icons in a grid that you can see all 4 icons with labels all at the same time. I think that looks great. It's readable, and it would allow you to fit 4 times as much content on there all at the same time. I would love to see like the Workouts app pick up the same kind of interface as WidgetSmith. The Workouts app has these really great looking icons that you can look at the icon and immediately know what workout it is. But you also have to see the whole screen taken up by the label and something that says open goal all the time for I don't know why. So things like that. I think the whole interface could be kind of slim down a little bit and stop taking up so much of my space with these things that I have to scroll through. Scrolling it's not great on the watch. It's, the digital crown is great, but I don't know. I just always feel like when I'm scrolling these lists, it's already taking too much work than I want to, when I feel like the content could be expressed in a lot of a much smaller interface.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like one of my favorite features on the watch is Control Center, because it's a grid of buttons and it feels very fast to use.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's a common problem that also extends to things like widgets on the iPhone, because you look at the shortcuts widget on the iPhone and there's just more space there that could be used more efficiently to fit more in without detracting too much from the actual UI.
Yeah, totally agree. So moving on the note of Control Center, I've got some crazy ideas on what I would like to see on the watch face. So for starters, Control Center, I agree it's a great interface, but it took the place of the Now Playing screen, which I don't know if you guys remember, but years ago, the swipe up from bottom was the Now Playing screen. And man, I loved that interface.
And now it's really hard to get to.
Yeah, the Now Playing screen has now been buried somewhere. You have to have it as a widget if you want it to, or as a complication if you want it to be available to your watch face. Otherwise, it's really hard to get to. You can sometimes find it in the multitasking menu, but not always. And I think that, and I might be getting a little crazy here, but I think that Control Center should actually be what shows up when you hit the side button. I don't basically ever use the multitasking interface.
Me neither.
And, multitasking in air quotes here, because it's not really doing much multitasking there. It's just kind of a list of recently used apps.
Yeah, it's an app switcher, basically.
Yeah, and I just never use that because the only apps I really end up using consistently are the ones that I have put as complications on my watch face.
Right.
And I think the Control Center is I love the Control Center interface, but it is taking up a prime piece of real estate on the Apple Watch that I don't use Control Center all the time throughout the day. I use it when I need to, check the battery or switch on and off of Wi-Fi or ping my phone. It's got great things in it, but they're things that I'm using not inconsistently. And I think putting those in the side button where they're still really easy to get to, but they're kind of off elsewhere, and then that would allow us to use the swipe up from the bottom. And, I would at least love to see the now playing screen go back there, because I feel like that now playing screen was really useful. A lot of what I want to do on my watch is control whatever music is playing in my AirPods. But I even want them to go more crazy. Like, let us set an app that lives below the screen. And say, hey, my most used app is, I want shortcuts to be really easily accessible. I want it to live in this swipe up area. And I swipe up and there's shortcuts and it's always running, kind of in the same way that complications get extra, system battery power applied to them so that they're kind of kept in memory more. And I want to be able to say, hey, I really want this app to be always available. I want you to keep it in memory as much as possible. And when I swipe up, I want shortcuts to be here and be ready, or Overcast, or whatever app I want to use. Have it live there in that beautiful piece of swipe up from the bottom real estate that is so convenient to get to. I think that would be really great.
I love that idea.
I have a name for it even too. I'd call it slide over for Apple Watch. I mean, that's essentially what you're describing, right? I mean, something that's always off to the side but ready to go. And I would definitely use music, because when I'm out, going for a walk or a jog or something like that, I'm using the Workouts app, and I do find it a little frustrating to sometimes get back to now playing if I have maybe a notification comes in because I get a text message or whatever it happens to be. You get to this situation where it's not always easy with the multitasking in app switcher to figure out where that now playing screen went. And sometimes you end up then having to go back either to the honeycomb, as Federico seems to use, or the list view, which any reasonable person uses.
No. It's the boring view. No.
I'm sorry, John, but you're outnumbered here. I switched back to the honeycomb.
Oh no!
I just want to see icons, man. I just want to move it around. Yeah, but no, if they don't.
All right.
I was in the list for a while, but ultimately, everything is inconvenient from the list. And at least with the honeycomb, if you need to move, if you need to scroll around at all, it's terrible. But if you just need something that is right surrounding the watch thing, the icons are better.
I just hate scrolling lists on the watch, period. Like, it's so tedious and slow, and most of the time I'm in a hurry and I just want to get stuff done quickly. So yeah, I agree with that idea. Alex is excellent. If they don't add it, I'm gonna be sad. Now I want it.
And if you want to get real crazy here with me, why not also let us have these slide over apps on either side?
Oh, nice.
Right now, this is for switching watch faces, and I don't really think anyone is constantly side swiping between watch faces. Or if you are, just hold down on the face and still swipe back and forth there. Give us slide over apps all over the place, left, right, down. Man, I mean, I don't even like Notification Center. You could put one at the top. I don't think that'll happen. Notification Center is fine, but it could use improvements, but it should probably be there. But man, I just want to be able to swipe things in and out that are my most used apps and let me control what they are. And man, that would be so great.
That would be nice. Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, because you'd be in your whatever app you happen to be in. Plus, you'd have, if you do left, right, and down, you'd have 3 other apps right there conveniently available. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by our friends at Linode. You can simplify your cloud infrastructure with Linode's Linux virtual machines, helping you develop, deploy, and scale your modern applications faster and easier. Whether you're working on a personal project or managing enterprise infrastructure, you deserve simple, affordable, and accessible cloud computing solutions that allow you to take your project to the next level. Linode has data centers all around the world with the same simple and consistent pricing regardless of location. Linode's new Cloud Manager makes it super easy to get set up with a server near you with low latency. You can expect simple pricing, unlike other cloud hosting companies that might charge for services you may not use. And of course, you can check it all out for free. Get started right now on Linode today with $100 free credit for listeners of App Stories by going to linode.com/appstories. In addition to shared and dedicated compute instances, you can use your $100 credit on S3 compatible object storage, managed Kubernetes, and more. If it runs on Linux, it runs on Linode. We've been using it ourselves at MacStories for some new projects, and it's fantastic. So go to linode.com/appstories and click on the Create Free Account button to get started. Go there now and check it out. Our thanks to Linode for their support of the show. All right, Alex, what else have you got for us?
All right, my last thought here is based around complications. And you guys have both mentioned this in different ways where I think everyone is a little, somewhere between a little and a lot of not happy with how complications work on the Apple Watch right now. And everyone can point to the really obvious version of this where if you have a timer on your Apple Watch home screen, on your watch face, you have a timer complication and you're not actually running the timer. It'll say in big text, set or something like that. Maybe it's the alarm. I don't know. One of these where it's just ridiculous, where it's like, well, how do you guys think that it's a good idea to leave this here all the time when it's not in use? It's just wasting real estate. And I want Apple, and I don't know, this kind of feels like a pipe dream, but I want them to give the control back to the user to say what they want to exist on their watch face and when, and give us some parameters for this. Like, let me say, if I'm at home, use a location-based parameter and show these complications. But if I leave my house, if I'm, at work or at, my coffee shop or something, well, I want you to show these other ones because I'm out and about or I'm at work or something like that. Location-based settings for what complications show up when. Then you could do time of day as a parameter. In the morning, I almost always check the weather before I leave my house, but I rarely am checking the weather throughout the day because it's just kind of, I'm already out. It is what it is. And I don't really need that necessarily. Or there's other examples of that where it's, maybe I'm doing something different in the morning. I'm in a different mode. And then as I go about my day, I want other things to show up. I want them to give me control of saying, okay, you can move the weather app off, after noon and show something else in that space. Or you could say, if you're currently playing audio, show the now playing thing or Overcast or, whatever app is playing audio. There could even be kind of a variable complication there that is just, this is the audio playing app. Whatever app happens to be outputting audio right now, its complication will appear here. This kind of thing. I want smart complications, but I want them to not try to do it with machine learning. We saw the Siri watch face. Apple tried to say, hey, we're just going to show you what you want to see whenever you want to see it. It just doesn't work. And I don't even blame that on them. Like, I look at my watch all the time throughout the day on a whim for random things. There's just no good way to figure out for me what I want to see. Just let me tell you. Allow the users, recognize the intelligence of the users and say, hey, we'll give this power to you. You tell us what complications you want to see, and we'll give you even more power to say when and how. And, that's obviously a complicated interface to build on how you would put that together. But I think the end result could be an Apple watch face that I can consistently know what it's going to show. And that's kind of what was always the problem with the Siri watch face, or a lot of the things where Apple tries to do machine learning to show automatically what I'm going to want to see, is it's just not consistent. And if it isn't consistent, I never use it. So I feel like I want to be able to know what's going to show up here. And then I can say, all right, well, I'm out of the house. I know that it set my watch face to be this. And when I glance at my watch, it's going to show me what I expect to be there.
Yeah, Alex, I think that is a fantastic idea. I've been thinking about things along those lines too. Things like, should we have stacks of complications, a little bit like widgets? And that has its own issues, I suppose, but in a way it is also giving control back to the user, because you may decide, well, I want this one big widget, the one big complication in the middle of my watch face, my info modular or whatever it is, to be the weather, but also to have my calendar available and maybe shortcuts and maybe my Now Playing and that kind of thing. And I really like the idea of giving back control to the user, because the thing about a watch is the interactions have to be short, they have to be quick, they has to be glanceable. And as a result, predictability is super important. And machine learning is just not good enough to get you to that kind of predictability.
Yep, exactly. It's just all about predictability for me. And that the interactions, like you said, just have to be so quick that if they're not predictable, I'm just going to take my phone out. If I don't think that I can do this on my watch really quickly, which is what I want to do, I would love to do it on my watch for a lot of these things where I'm just kind of glancing at something or really quick, tapping play pause or whatever. It would be more convenient to do on my watch if it were consistent and predictable, and I knew it was going to be a 2-second interaction every time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Alex, what else do you have for us?
All right, so I've got another idea that is a little kind of, it would be in depth for them to do it properly, but I think it could be done, which is, one of the things watchOS struggles with is loading spinners. I see just too many loading spinners when I'm trying to use watchOS for things. I open an app and it's spinning, or Siri even is a big culprit of this, where it'll spin or it'll say, "Oh, let me get back to you," which I don't like. I don't know if Siri can be helped for this, but what I want to see is Apple to develop a framework where developers could say, "Hey, here are some stateless actions that you can just present to the user that they can just do regardless of whether this app is currently in a state of being fully loaded." So for instance, if I open Overcast and it normally needs to kind of load up what podcasts are in my kind of full setup of podcasts, but I usually just kind of want to get to the Now Playing screen in Overcast and like fast forward or rewind 30 seconds or play pause or change the volume or whatever. None of those things really need me to, the watch doesn't need to know anything about the state for me to send a pause command to Overcast. So why not allow developers to say, "Hey, here's a little interface that would kind of, for the Overcast example, it would probably look a lot like a Now Playing interface." And it's just like, hey, just, if they open Overcast while it's loading up, you can show them this play, pause, fast forward, rewind thing. And if they hit it, it'll just kind of send that command to the phone and the phone will do it. And they don't really need to know, the watch doesn't need to know everything that's going on. So I think that could cut down on kind of the annoyance of these spinners. And this is assuming that the Apple Watch is still in a state where it just can't quite get the communication with the phone going quick enough for there to not be these loading spinners. Obviously, ideally, these would just not be a thing. But it's, we're on watchOS 7 and this is still a problem. And I just kind of feel like, hey, maybe figure out a way the developers could say, all right, here's some super quick interactions, let them do this, and then they can move on with their lives. And that would, again, give us some more of this kind of idea of consistency and, me knowing for certain that when I open this app, I can really quickly get done what I need to do and then move along. And if I'm actually looking to, open the Overcast app or whatever to navigate my podcast menus and find the podcast that I want to play, in that case, that was already going to be a longer interaction. I'm okay with waiting, a couple seconds for a loading spinner before I go about my business there. But it's when I want to do something fast and it is slow, that is really frustrating.
Yeah, it absolutely is frustrating. And I think that's an interesting concept. And it's right along the lines of a lot of things we've seen with some of Apple's app design in recent history, which is kind of a progressive disclosure and progressive design choices where you get the main controls out there front and center right away, and you make it easy for people to do what's most common. And then, if there's something more that needs to be done, it's available. But for most people, 80% of people, all they're going to want to do right away is do the play pause thing. So that makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things we saw recently too, Alex, was the accessibility features that are coming to the Apple Watch. And it was interesting when this press release came out about a week and a half ago, was that it's pretty clearly an iOS and watchOS 15 type of feature, and that perhaps Apple is clearing the decks for more announcements at WWDC with other features, but the accessibility stuff, especially with a watch, were really interesting. And I feel like, those are great features for accessibility, but it kind of hints at something that maybe Apple could do that has even broader application, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was so excited when I saw those accessibility features. And I mean, that's just so impressive from an accessibility point of view, where really, really good accessibility features are the kind of thing that you don't necessarily need to require, accessibility to be on everywhere for it to be a useful thing to you. That's kind of the best way that accessibility features are implemented. And man, I saw these like clinch and pinch interactions, and I thought, I want those. Those are so cool. And, one of the other similar gestures that I've actually kind of had on my mind for a while that we did not see Apple add yet, but that I would love to see, is the idea that, when a stack of notifications comes in, especially if one notification comes in and you look at it and then another one comes in afterwards, there's no way to see the next notification without scrolling.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. Yeah. And what I've consistently been thinking about is, what if I could make kind of like a doorknob opening, closing twist gesture where I kind of like rotate the watch clockwise, and it kind of causes a scroll to occur. So the notification kind of scrolls upwards as I flick my wrist in that kind of twisting motion. I don't know if you can visualize that, but I feel like it would feel really natural to scroll that way. And then when I get to the bottom of a notification, just have it scroll right off the screen and show me the next one.
What I think I want is a gesture that when a spam call comes in and it's buzzing my wrist, that I just shake my fist at the air and it hangs up the call and blocks the person.
I love it.
And blocks the person automatically. Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today. I mean, Federico and I have thoughts about the Apple Watch, but you've been doing this since the very beginning, so it's been great to kind of get your thoughts on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I know way too much about watchOS.
You absolutely do. And people should be on the lookout because, Alex will be doing our watchOS review again in the fall. So it's always a great review. I always look forward to it. It's always fun to read. And that'll be part of our entire review roundup at the end of the, I guess in the fall, whenever Apple ends up releasing things. The schedule's been a little off here and there. You can find Alex and me and Federico all over at MacStories.net. Alex is on Twitter and Instagram, of course. He is _ Alex Guyot on Twitter. That's _ AlexGuyot. And on Instagram, he's AJ Guyot. AJGuyot. Oh, Alex, you're making this difficult for me. I've got Federico down. I don't have you down. All right, let me move on. Federico, you can find him. He's on Twitter and Instagram. He's at Vitici everywhere, which makes it super easy, unlike Alex, who's the problem child of MacStories.net. Federico is at Vitici. He's VITICCI, wherever you happen to go. And same with me. I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.